WAN technology, then we might actually have 10 gigabit using SW, LW, or EW specifications. Now, I don't want to confuse you, and I don't want you to get confused, and I don't even want you to look into, right now anyway, the differences between SR, LR, and ER, or the differences between SW, LW, and EW. Basically what I've done here, and the reason I've listed these, matter of fact, on all of these past few screens, what I've listed are the exact specifications that are listed in the Network Plus certification objective outline. These are the ones that you might see questions about. The reality is that to be a network specialist, you only have to have a basic understanding of these specifications. 10 base T, 100 base TX and FX, 1000 base T, 1000 base X, and then all these 10 Gs. But otherwise, don't worry about it beyond that. Alright, now the last thing that we need to go over in this video is wiring distribution. And I will tell you what, most of this is just coming right down to definitions. So this is definitely the not so fun stuff. Cross connects are cable which connect you to a backbone or provider. It's crossing over the connection from the actual computer and getting you into a backbone or a provider. When we say provider, it could be a WAN connectivity provider, internet provider, things like that. Typically, your cross connects are these patch cables that you find in a wiring closet connected to a patch panel. Well, what the heck is a wiring closet and a patch panel? Well, a wiring closet is just that. It's a box that holds a bunch of cabling and paneling. A patch panel, well, I'll tell you what, the best way to describe a patch panel, just give you a picture. This is what a patch panel looks like. And you'll notice that on the front we have, and it's kind of hard to see with the coloring here, but we have a bunch of ports right here and right here where we can plug in cables. And what you can't see, by the way, before we go into that, the white that you see up here above each of these ports, that's just a place to label the port, and that's always a really good idea when you're putting all this cabling coming in from all these different desks, and then they come in and they go to these different ports right here. You really want to have them labeled so that when you are trying to figure out what's connected to what out in your office, you don't have to run all sorts of different cable testing and the old-fashioned having somebody over somewhere else and you're plugging in and unplugging and is the light going on? Is the light going off? You don't want to worry about all that, so you should label it. But anyway, what you can't see, what's on the back side of the patch panel here, is a place where you will commonly find wires that are going off to the backbone or to the provider. And those are the cables that are typically referred to as your cross connects. Now beyond that, there's a couple other definitions here. We have MDF and IDF. MDF stands for main distribution frame, and it is just that. It's a frame that would hold main circuitry and power connectors and things like that. And IDF stands for intermediate distribution frame, which is a frame that you usually find not so much, the main distribution frame I should say you find in your wiring closets, whereas your intermediate distribution frame you find out in the office where you might need to have an intermediary connector. Don't worry about them. They're just definitions. MDF, main distribution frame, IDF, intermediate distribution frame. From there we have our 66 and 110 blocks, which are just that. They're wiring blocks used typically by the phone company. If you look at the picture, I know it's kind of a small picture here, but you have a whole bunch of phone cable, and they all get tied into these wiring blocks and get sent out then to the different phones around the office. You have some additional type of cable called 25 and 100 pair cable, and check it out, it's twisted pair cable just like we saw with our standard, but now you have 25 pairs or 50 wires or 100 pairs or 200 wires in a cable. Again, I don't want you fretting over this. just know what they basically are. If you actually need to use them, if you end up in a real world scenario where you need to use these, you're going to have a telecommunications expert who's going to be showing it all to you. If you're expected to be that telecommunications expert, well, then you're going to need to go out and take a serious cabling course. But to be network administrator, network specialist, you don't necessarily need to know more than being able to have a somewhat educated conversation with the telecommunications expert. Now we have demarc and demarc extension. Demarc, which is short for demarcation or demarcation point, is the point at which the telephone company's network ends and your wiring begins. Okay? And it's very, even on your house, you'll have the phone company, their wiring comes to a point on your house where if you were to look, you'll see there's a little box where you now begin your wiring, meaning the wiring that's in your house, or in the case of a company, the wiring within the company. A demarc extension is really nothing more than it's kind of like making an extension of the way the telephone company's wiring is in place, meaning there's a difference between the way your wiring is and the way their wiring is. And the demarc extension is when that exterior point where the telephone company's network ends, but maybe you're not distributing out to your network. Well, the demarc extension is this extra extension from the true demarc to where your distribution of your network begins. That would be probably the best way to put it. The distribution of your network begins. And the last thing we have here is something called the smart jack. Well, the smart jack is the actual termination of a T1 line coming from the phone company at your office. Okay, it's the actual jack that it's plugged into. And that is really all you need to know about wiring distribution, unless you're going to become a telecommunications expert. So, in this video, we talked about the different types of cabling, right? We talked about twisted pair cable, coaxial cable, and fiber optic cable. We learned what the plenum is and when you're supposed to use plenum grade cable. Basically, it's all about fire hazard, right? We don't want to have our cabling become an actual fire hazard, as in extending the fire. And we also don't want to create toxic fumes that might make someone sick or kill them. We saw some of the common connectors used in network cabling. And the most common connectors that you will see out there will be your RJ45 on your twisted pair cable. And then I would say the next most common would be your SC, your ST, and your LC fiber optic connectors. We learned some of the different wiring standards, 568A, 568B for our twisted pair cable. We learned about all the different LAN technology types, ranging from, first of all, the actual standards of Ethernet using CSMA CD type communication, along with all the 10, 100, 1000, and 10G base, TX, FX, etc., etc. And we learned about our wiring distribution hardware. Whew! Well, I don't know about you, but that's enough for me to take in right now. So why don't we call it quits for this video? Go grab a little break, maybe grab a little caffeine, and I'll see you in the next video.